Well, happy Easter. Welcome to week 8 of Lent Life Job as we conclude the Sundays of this series, although we have the rest of this week still to read in the journey guide if you're going through that. Today we are joined by Cory Morris. Hello.
Hello, hello.
And who are you, Cory Morris?
I am Daniel Smith. No, I'm Cory Morris. I do high school ministry here. Actually, junior high as well. We've got them combined at this point. And I've been working with Element for 2 years now, just over.
Is the combination just because of COVID right now, or is it like a plan until?
Honestly, I really like it. I think it's working out well. For the most part, yeah, it's because of COVID, and they didn't have, junior high basically met on Sunday mornings. And since we were, for the most part, shut down, we kind of took them under our wing, as you may say.
And does your son Nolan still fit into his little Carhartts?
He doesn't, unfortunately. It felt like it was a real quick use. Had them on one day and the next day they didn't fit.
But it was really for the purpose of dedication anyway.
That's true. That's true. But I do love them and we're keeping them. Every kid we have will wear them. So,
nice.
So yeah. And I do have an idea if you guys want to hear about it.
What is your idea?
So when kids, they quickly grow out of everything. I'm thinking when you have a good item, like the Carhartt overalls, for instance, you could have lengths. So as they grow, you would zipper on the new length to like the pant legs or whatnot. You don't have to worry about arms because it's overalls. So.
Okay, so how about this? Instead of adding zippers to it, when you buy it, there's just one zipper, or like 3 extra zippers, one for the legs, one for the torso, and there's actually like extra in there. And so instead of you have to like add something every time, it's already there. You just unzip it and it goes, because it's already in it. So
it's like a parachute that just keeps.
Yeah.
How thick would those pants be?
Dude, look,
babies.
I'm not a baby. I'm not wearing it. I don't care.
All right. And with that, would you mind giving a recap of this message?
Today is Easter, and we get to the end, essentially, of the Job journey of what we're looking through, except for the stuff you're going to finish this week in your journey guides. Now, Job's story, which we kind of ended a lot last week, gets to the place where he realizes who God is, and that completely changes his life. In the scriptures, there is this idea of taste and seeing that the Lord is good, and Job gets to taste and see that God is good. Now, today we get to see that ultimately what Jesus came to do for us in our rescue and our redemption and our salvation. And we understand that God has given all of us certain desires in our lives. And all of those desires, when lived in a godly way, are meant to bring us back to who God is, to see His goodness and His grace. And all the things that Job kind of sees of who God reveals Himself to be, we get to also experience when we understand the right desires that God has given us. Our lives are not about trying harder to love God. It's about resting in the love and grace that He has already given us, living out that in every single day, because that is what is going to lead to a joyful, full life.
So you talked a lot about the desires, material desires, achievement desires, relational desires, physical desires. So what desires, and this is your question in the middle, what desires has God given you, or what makes you come alive? Cory, we'll throw that to you.
Oh, okay. Something that I've had since I was very young, probably a teenager, is the desire to be a husband and a father, which is probably pretty abnormal, I think, for a teenager. I think desires are usually the closer stuff. But for me, it was always to be a father and
a father
and a
how
husband.
Many? Did it matter? Or just...
I mean, that kind of fluctuates. When you have one, you start thinking, do I want a second one? Can I handle a second one is probably the better question. That's probably one of my oldest desires that I've kind of hung on to, and that obviously stems from my relationship with my father.
So can you expand that a little bit about your dad?
Yeah, so I didn't meet my dad until I was 6 years old. He was around until I was about 2, and my mom decided that their relationship wasn't healthy. He was addicted to alcohol and drugs and stuff like that. And I didn't meet him until I was 6 years old. So I always wondered who my dad was.
Do you remember that meeting at 6 years old?
I don't remember it specifically. I remember more, actually, oddly enough, when I was younger, asking about who my dad was, not knowing him. That was actually kind of a more impressionable experience than the meeting itself. From a young age, the desire to meet my dad, and why isn't he here? Why doesn't he, care about his family maybe, or maybe he's just too busy, or what that's like. And so when I finally met him, it wasn't, all it was cracked up to be. in reality, but of course I didn't know. I thought it was, kind of the greatest moment of my life. My dad was around at that point because my mom had decided, it was okay for him to kind of be a part of my life. He had cleaned up and changed his life, which I really believe he did.
So did he move here?
He did, yeah. He moved here. And then my parents actually got married. They weren't married to begin with, and then got married. I think my mom wanted to, create a normal family, whatever normal is, family life. And of course that didn't pan out because, people changing takes a lifetime, I guess.
How long were they married for?
10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I got quite a few years of, experiencing what it's like to have a dad, I guess. My dad was really trying for a long time, at least from the perspective of a kid and from what I saw. And it just didn't last. He kind of fell back into old sin and stuff and his crutches and stuff like that. When things got difficult, he probably just reached back to what was comforting for him.
So all this bred into you, this desire to not only have a family, but I'm sure there's that aspect of what did you want to redeem a fatherhood or?
So I think, as a teenager, my mind was, I can do this better, right? I can be a better father. I can be a better husband. That's my goal, is I want to be better. And the more that, obviously when, I became a Christian and my life, slowly changing and God changing my heart, I think that desire is turning into redemption because I'm realizing I'm not better. I'm not a better person than anybody, but my dad. In fact, realizing that I could be just like my dad if it weren't for Jesus, and not that my dad's like the epitome of bad or anything. I think he's just like everybody else. But
you had a normal dad, really, that was just messed up like everybody else.
Struggled like everybody else. Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize that when I was younger. Obviously, I thought like this is not it's not okay. But he is worse than me because of X, Y, or Z. And I think as I got older, God was like, well, you're just like your dad.
So how is having a baby, getting married, then having a baby? How is that almost like a resurrection story? Like it almost seems like that time growing up with your dad. That's like Lent, and then you get married and have a baby, and that's like Easter and joy and resurrection and new life.
So for me, getting married, which has been 10 years now in June. That initially just made me realize how selfish I was. So it didn't feel like redemption. It felt like, wow, I am terrible. And it doesn't change. When I had a kid, it felt the same way. Like, well, I am very selfish. My kid needs a lot because, well, kids are very selfish too. So what I think God is teaching me is that literally relying on Him, walking with Him is the only thing that makes any difference in that. And so the redemption in that is knowing that God, despite our sin and despite, no one being good, is that He's willing to walk with us. The fact that He's willing to come to where we are and say, hey, take my hand. I got you. Let's walk together. And that changes everything.
I like that everybody has a story. And it seems so often that we don't realize everybody has a story.
Well, we become so myopic in our story and our whatever it is that
and we look at how people react to things and do things like seriously, what's your dad's story of growing up? Why did he end up being in a place where he ran towards alcohol and drugs rather than engaging life in a real way?
So I appreciate you sharing that, because one of the questions I was going to say is, where are some of the other material achievement, relational desires, and that's definitely a very relational desire, to have a family, to redeem, whether those were the words you would have put into it, but to change kind of that, what you experienced you had for somebody else.
I'm not assuming that you have a baby and you're like, it's like Easter. That's not the thoughts that you have. But it is kind of the idea of new life and redemption story when you kind of put it in the narrative of the gospel, I think, that of what God does.
Right. It points us in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Because one of the things you said in the message is, every time we experience an authentic desire, a God-implanted desire in us, we should come to understand more deeply who God is and what kind of God He is. So I wanted to ask, now that you're a parent and you're dealing with a child that is selfish in of his own right, and it shows you how selfish you are, do you see God in a different way now? Do you relate to Him as maybe a father? How does that change?
Yeah, learning to offer baby grace is really strange because they don't understand any of it and they don't care at this point, right? But when you get frustrated and I don't know how someone reacts to a baby doing something, it's your reaction now is the only thing you can control, right? I can't make my baby happy or quit crying or whatever.
So Aaron, how about you? What makes you come alive in the desires of God's?
Well, I feel like I can't say anything after that. It's so good.
But you go first.
So I've always had this desire, and maybe it's a God-implanted desire, to be understood in a way. Like I have these ideas and concepts in my head, and I always want people to understand them. And that now leads me to a place where kind of I do what I do. And when I speak through things, so I've had people tell me I am much more of a teacher than even like a preacher, because I like every single message that I give to people to walk away with something. It's just not the things you've heard a million other times. I want everybody to go, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I learned that. Like every time I want people to learn something because I want to learn things. And so I want to explain this to people too, so they can hear and learn. And that desire leads me to what I teach and how I teach and why I plan so far out to think through all these things, because I want people to learn and grow. And I think that desire can become codependent if it's like, want everybody to understand me, or it can become a godly thing if I use it in a way that people can grow, and I think through things in ways that I can help people to grow. So I think it can be bad on one end or it could be good on the other. It all depends on where my focus is with it.
Well, I think that's a core tenet of who God made us, right? So God made us to be worshipers, but He also made us to be learners. Like we're never supposed to just be at the end of knowledge. And he created us to continually walk in His ways, and He's the one who teaches us the right way of living through people and Scripture and stuff. But so I think that's a good thing that we learn.
I think I also have a desire for community too, because I get energized by being around people. The first week we started services again. What is that? A couple weeks ago at this point now, and when we do that. And we start services. I got up that morning and I'm just like, man, I don't want to hang out with anybody today. I'm just tired. And as soon as I get here and people are here, I'm like, I come alive and I'm like, oh, this is great, people. And then at the end, I don't even want to leave because people were there and we were hanging out, and I just enjoy being around people. And that's a desire that I have. Like my wife has a desire many times to not be around people because that's how she kind of re-energizes. But the more I'm around people, the more excited I get and the more that I want to be around them.
So how do we embrace the desires God's given us and follow them and pursue them in right ways?
Well, I always think you can take things completely negatively. Like people go, oh, you just can't run after your desires, you're going to sin. But this is why we look at God-given desires and what they're supposed to look like as we live them out. Because you can take any desire and turn it towards sin. And so I think it's important first when we start to understand what that desire is to look for ways that we can honor and glorify God with it. I think if we don't, we're doing a disservice to the desire God's given us and a disservice to God and us. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the first thing is when you step into that, it's like, okay, how can this desire that God has given me be used for good? I think there's a lot of times that people don't understand that the desires God gives us are meant to lead us to joy and understanding how good He is. And if we can't understand a way to live out that desire that He's given us, we talk to other people. This is why community is important. This is a desire I have. How do you think that works out in a way that honors God? And I think community can help in that.
Yes, I concur.
So what do you, Cory, for you, if youth come up and they're, especially as they're ending with school, high school, and they have desires, or do they even realize desires, or how do you counsel them as they enter into adulthood, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. The desire that usually comes up the most is dating. You guys remember high school, you want to date. And that's a tough one to navigate because
the best answer for a lot of guys is just don't.
No, yeah. And that's usually what I give, and it's like, this is why. And I actually have experiences in my life, where dating in high school wasn't the best decision. And I feel like high school students hear what you're saying, but they're like, but come on, I'm not you, or whatever. As long as the desire is a godly desire, there's advice that you can give and a place that they can start. Well, if this is what you want, here's how you begin to do that thing, whatever that thing is. If it's dating, start praying for your wife. Don't date yet. That's probably not the direction you want to go right away.
The best advice you give to kids when they talk about, do you think that your future spouse out there could be dating somebody else? Okay, sure. What do you want them to do with them?
Yeah.
Then that's what
Stay away from them.
Yeah, then that's what you do. You just treat them like you'd want your future spouse treated.
Well, thank you both. Happy Easter. Appreciate your time today. And going back to everyone has a story, and maybe if you're getting together with somebody, family over Easter, listen to their story. Listen to see what they've gone through and how it shapes their desires, whether it's the material, achievement, relational, and physical. Be listening to what desires are in people and how we can encourage each other on to pursue godly things in it, to honor Him, and use His gifts of those desires for His good, for His glory and our good. And with that, we'll see you next week.
I would like to say too,
as we jump back into Greatest Story Ever Retold.
If you guys eat something or drink something today, any of you guys,
or watch TV,
just take a moment in that and realize how good God is. Mm-hmm. Because whatever bite, if you eat something that tastes good, you'd be like, man, this is good. Because God didn't have to make food taste good. Could have just made nutrients. It's like I always say, could have just made it grow on trees like Nutrinuggets, and that's what your food is.
Oh, goodness.
But no, He makes it taste good. That's amazing.
Boom.
We're done? We're good?
All right, thank you.
Cool. That wasn't so bad.
No.
Did you hear about the youth guy and the Muslim and the Christian that walk into a bar?
No.
Neither have I. I just wondered if you heard it.
Oh, goodness.